Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining. It's my pleasure to do this webinar with you all. Thank you for taking the time. I know you are busy. So that we are all in the same page here, we are going to be talking about how to create outstanding renders in AutoKitchen. A lot of what I'm going to say is probably applicable to other programs. Certainly when we talked about theory or some of the components of a render, those are going to apply no matter what software you use. However, when I refer to specific steps, when I talk about how to do something, I will be referring to AutoKitchen, specifically AutoKitchen versions 21 and 22. Right now, AutoKitchen 21 is the current version. This is what we sell. AutoKitchen 22 is available for internal beta testing, and what I'm going to be using today, I think it's going to be released between now and the end of the year. So I think that's just sort of to set the kind of the tone for what are the things that we're going to be showing you today. So I'm going to show you a little bit of AutoKitchen, but most of my presentation is actually going to be based on a slide presentation, like a PowerPoint type presentation. And then I'm going to use a couple of tabs at the top here to show you specific things, either from the AutoKitchen cloud or maybe for using a specific file in AutoKitchen when I need to illustrate a particular point. The presentation is going to flow hopefully smoothly enough, except that a couple of times I may need to deviate for a moment. So my apologies if that is a little bit distracting. I hope it isn't. And I'll make a point to do a small summary after each of the main components, okay? So let's start by taking a look back in time and see how the idea of presenting concepts, kitchen design, say the remodel, a new kitchen design, whichever, how has changed over time. So if you go back, say 30 or 40 years, we are talking about pencil and paper, with different degrees of sophistication, from the people who were using the back of an envelope to draw the kitchen to the people who were drafting with a drafting table and big, paper and all of that. So that was how things began, very labor intensive. From here, in the early 80s, maybe late 70s, early 80s, with the personal computer and some of the drafting programs like AutoCAD and others, things began to be a little bit easier. I mean, you still were literally working line by line. And by the way, some people still use a two-dimensional software application, which is fine. It's just that, some of the drawbacks is that you don't really have any perspectives. It's a little bit time consuming. And of course, there is no color whatsoever. The next phase was really when three-dimensional programs came into existence. This is when we started in the early to mid 1990s. And here, the major innovation was that perspectives were now automated, so there is no need to spend long sessions, drawing a perspective. But then also the elevations were largely automated, so that when you draw your room, your elevations are instantly available. You don't have to create them from scratch like you have to do with a two-dimensional application. The three-dimensional programs, they keep, improving and also allow you to do color renders. This same kitchen here, this perspective in black and white, when you render in color, looks like this. So this is the black and white, this is the color. And this is sort of where we are today, except that things keep progressing. And now, in addition to color renders, we're also able to create both walkthroughs and panoramic views of the kitchen. And those tend to look also pretty good, I think, and allow you to show not just a static view, but also a dynamic view of the kitchen. So my point here, I think, is whatever you're using right now for presenting your projects, what is clear is that in a space of 30 or 40 years, we've come a long way. And I believe that because of the progress made in this front, I think these things are here to stay. So if we wonder, why are color renders important in the first place? Is this something that is going to go away? We don't think so. And we don't think so because of these reasons. It's a tool that allows you to maximize the understanding of the design. Of course, all of this is for the customer. You guys in the trade, you don't need no color render for yourself. We know that, but your customers do. And with a color render, you minimize or eliminate surprises. You are helping customers decide, sometimes it's the color of the flooring versus the color of the countertop, or just visualizing the space. And it's also an additional service that you can provide. The designers who haven't embraced color rendering typically, well, it could be a number of reasons, right? But some of the reasons that you hear might be, well, this, it's complicated, it takes too much time, maybe the images look a little bit cartoonish, the illumination is hard to crack, maybe we don't really need it. There is some truth to that, particularly a few years ago, when the software programs were not as developed as they are today, and also when maybe the hardware itself, the computers were not as quick to crack a render. The counter arguments from us, when you're using AutoKitchen, the renders can be done in minutes, as in 2 or 3 minutes. I think they look professional enough. I think they look pretty decent. I think the illumination, particularly with version 21 and 22, is being made very straightforward, largely automated. And I think it will make you a better designer if you use present color renders. Not in the sense that all of a sudden your designs are going to be more catchy, but in the sense that you're going to be a better communicator. Okay, let's look at what are the components of a good render. This applies to no matter what program you use. You need to think in terms of, you need a perspective view. You need to be able to apply colors, finishes, and materials to your design. Otherwise, it's not in color. And you need to be able to solve the illumination. Those 3 things go in that particular order, and they have equal weight. So this is not one of those things where you can say, I need to get 3 things. If I get 2 of the 3, I should be in good shape. If you get 2 of the 3, your render will be in trouble. So you need to really get the 3 of them correct. Now, the good news is that they are fairly simple. And today, part of my goal is to show you how simple this can be when you sit down to do it. Let's see. The first of the 3 components is the perspective view. This is the easiest and the fastest because all you need to do really is you go into floor plan view, you right click. I'm showing you now an actual design in AutoKitchen. So if you're in floor plan view, you right click, you select perspective, you decide where you want to look from. Typically in this kitchen, I'll say maybe from here somewhere. You point with the camera and you click. You can ignore this window, the window with the plus and the minus and the arrows. This is supposed to help you move the render. In most cases, it's unnecessary. Click on the green check mark, move closer or further away by rolling the wheel. And then once you have a view that you think it might work, check to see in fast shade so that it really works, meaning that you're not inside or behind a wall or inside a cabinet or things like that. So that's how you create a perspective. The point and click, try to do a customer point of view. And of course, save the view when you find the view that you like. The reason for saving the view is that you may refer to the view later on more than once. That's one reason. The other reason is that for the same kitchen, you may end up with 2 or 3 perspective views. Now, saving the view is sometimes confusing to people because it sounds like I'm saving the file, but it's actually different. So you save the view by, let me just move my, you save the view by going into view at the top of your kitchen screen, and then you have a little floppy symbol here that says save view. So you're not really saving the file. Of course, you need to save the file as well. But we're just saving the view by giving it a name, like this might be perspective, whatever. And then you click on the green check mark, and the moment you click in that green check mark, if you want to later on revisit that view, you go to load view, and then that view will be there. So that's easy enough. The examples of maybe views that may not be, well, this would be one that I think, this is a fast shape, by the way, this is not a render. This is a view that I think looks decent in the sense that it shows quite a bit of the kitchen and it's not looking distorted. The next one is maybe not so good. It doesn't show as much of that kitchen, and it's a little bit distorted, and it looks like somebody sat down on the floor to take the view. None of this is necessarily right or wrong, 100%. You need to do whatever you need to do, but in general terms, most of the time, the views that work best are the ones that are eye level. So keep that in mind. So in terms of what are the tips or what are the things to keep in mind when creating a perspective view, try to do an eye-level perspective. Check the view in fast shade to make sure that it works, that you're not behind a wall, or things like that. And then save your views, give them a name. That way, it will be easier to locate them later on when you go to do the render maybe once or twice. Okay, from here, we go to materials. And the materials, it's really all about making sure that all the elements in the view have the correct material or color. There is a component here that is artistic. This is what I mean by that is, how do you decide what colors go with what, right? And that's something that you guys probably know all too well. The software at this point in time, at least AutoKitchen, is not going to help you with that decision making. Maybe in the near future it will. So the things to keep an eye on is the mechanics of how do you go about making all the elements in your design to have the proper color. These materials and colors include things like for the walls, for the floor, for the ceiling, the windows, the doors, and of course, all the cabinetry, the hood, the appliances on the countertops. The buttons that you need to click to achieve this are all of them under the photo menu in AutoKitchen. If you are in the market for a software package to do color renders, in the chapter of materials, I think the things to look for are both scope and speed, meaning you need to be able to use a software program that allows you to be very detailed when applying finishes, but also that it will give you the option to apply finishes very quickly to the entire design. So that's important. If it is not time efficient, you're not going to use it. So that's the reason for speed. The second feature to look for, if you're looking for a software program to do renders, is the ability to customize your finishes. No matter how extensive the portfolio of finishes, the catalog of finishes might be in any given program, it will come a time where you need to do something unique. You need to create a color that just wasn't in the catalog, and then you need to be able to insert that color into your program. This is a fairly normal thing to do, but it's important to consider. In AutoKitchen, by the way, in 21, 22, even in prior versions, all the material colors are preloaded. So when you install the program, you have all the finishes, whether they are universal finishes or whether they are specific brands. In version 21 and 22, we've added Benjamin Moore, we added Sherwin-Williams, and a few others. Let's see, the way to apply materials to your design is, start with the architecture. These are the bricks and mortars. So this is where you change the flooring, or you change the color of the walls, or you change the doors, the windows, whatever it might be that is part of that room. The library for architectural finishes, you can see in the picture here, and you trigger that by right-clicking on any architectural element and then selecting Change Surface Finish. So that's how you add or how you access the materials. For everything else that is not the floor, the walls, the ceiling, the doors, and the windows, you go to the Change Cabinet Materials button, which opens a window that looks like this. This is a busy window. And one of the novelties in version 22 is that we've made available the drawings, we made available the materials you're using in a particular drawing and created a subset of those materials so that if you need to apply colors to elements in the design, you don't have to go looking for that particular finish. You can actually locate that faster because it will show you a subset of materials. But anyway, in terms of how to think about this window can be divided into top and bottom. The top are the elements that you can apply a material to. Things like the cabinet interior, the exterior, the frame, if it is a frame cabinet, the shelf, the doors, and by the way, doors can have more than one finish, the glass on the door, if it is a glass door, the handles or knobs, and of course the moldings. All those elements are at the top. At the bottom, you have the actual catalogs that allow you to go in to select a material. The catalogs themselves, the types of finishes is alphabetical, so it starts with color and then go all the way down to, I think, woods is the last one. Then the actual collections may or may not be, most of them, I believe, are not alphabetically listed. However, you can see the names when you click on the particular window. It will show you all the finishes available. It will show you the name. And if you double click on one of them, any one of them, it will show you a bigger thumbnail. This button here that says OneClick Selection is important because it allows you to apply a particular finish to all the elements in the design in one click. So even though you can be very specific and have different color cabinets in a design, there are cases where that's not necessary, where everything, imagine like a white kitchen with a dark countertop. So what you would do is, select the white that you want to use, click on the OneClick Selection, and then change the countertop material to whatever finish, and you will be done. And this is a way that this is how it looks, from here where we have different colors to the next slide where everything has the same finish. Another important section of this window is on the upper right corner where it says material combinations. So these are predefined sets of materials. If you click on load material set, you will see a list of sample combinations. You can edit this list by adding your own material combinations and also by deleting some of the ones that you either don't use or don't like. To add the material combination to the list, all you need to do is obviously apply the materials first, maybe using whatever the OneClick Selection or whatnot, then click on the Save Material Set, and then that combination will be there for you to use. Imagine that you do, a lot of white kitchens, but you have different degrees of white. Some might be more bluish white, some of them might be more creamy white. So you may have a couple of color combinations predefined by you with whatever countertop you think goes best with that particular shade of white. And then it will be accessible to you. It will be at your fingertips really quickly by clicking on Load Materials. This is the way it looks. These are the sets that come included with Auto Kitchen, just to give you an idea of some of the things that you can do. A final button on that section of the Change Cabinet Materials is the group. So this is applicable to designs where you have more than one color, more than one finish. Sometimes it's the upper cabinets, it might be one color. The base cabinets may be a different color. That happens often. And so it happens with other cabinets, like maybe the island, maybe one color or not. Of course, you can do the material assignation cabinet by cabinet, but that will be time consuming. So in most cases, it's faster to go to floor plan, define the group of cabinets that are going to share the same finish, like say the island, give it a name, call it like island. And then when you do the OneClick Selection to apply the finish, as long as you have the island group selected, it will apply that finish only to the island. and that will make things look the way you want it without spending too much time. The material application can be at times very granular. So if you think about elements like a shelf or a crown molding, you're going to have one finish, and that's probably all you need. If you think about a gas range, to think of an example, you're going to need to have the ability to apply different materials to different components of that gas range. Because if you think about it, you have, the box itself, the doors, the glass, the handle or handles, the knobs, the grate, the burners, the backsplash. So it's conceivable that you may need to apply different colors to different elements. In particular, nowadays, there are companies out there launching new products. Some of them where they make a play so that the knobs and the handles are maybe brass, or so that will be convenient to do, and you need to be able to do it. Otherwise, when you do your render, then the gas range is going to look a little bit cartoonish. Okay, one more thing to say about materials is that you have the ability to edit them. Now, I don't want to send you off the deep end here into editing materials nilly-willy, because the truth of the matter is that in most cases is totally unnecessary. The catalogs of materials that we have, they come with specific properties, either created by us or created by the vendors who sell those materials, and they are supposed to look correct, and I think they are in the overwhelming majority of cases. However, it's possible that in a particular scenario, you may need to emphasize a particular finish. The typical case involves countertops because they are so visible in most perspectives, so it's possible that even though you applied a particular, type of countertop to this kitchen, it's possible that it doesn't look correct because of, who knows, because of illumination, because of different factors, right? So if that happens to you, you have the ability to edit that material. Now, this is where you get into a little bit of things that might be unfamiliar, like roughness, refraction, transparency. These values, might be things that you're not comfortable with. If you're not, remember, in most cases, you don't need to worry about this. If you want to start in small steps and you need to play with the countertop, edit the reflection. Because the reflection, if you alter the value, you place a higher value here, is going to make the countertop to be much more reflective. A lower value is going to make it much more matte. And sometimes reflection works in tandem with roughness, so you need to probably alter both. Again, only when you think it's necessary. In most cases, it is not. Here's an example of what happens. This is the same view, the same kitchen that I showed you earlier. And you have the image on the left. You have a high reflection. The image on the right is the same material, it's the same view, just about, and is very matte. This doesn't really have much reflection, and that's really achieved through the editing of that material. So in terms of what are the tips or the things to keep in mind when considering the material application, is the use of the one-click selection as much as possible, because it will give you speed. It's also the idea of saving those often used material combinations so that you don't have to recreate the wheel every time. Get used to group cabinets that have the same finish, and call them a name. It could be, a descriptive name. It will be better than a name with some enigma to it, because then you will not remember what it is. And then keep in mind that if, despite all of this, a particular finish or color doesn't look right, you have the ability to edit it by accessing the edit materials. Okay, from here, we go to the third component. Remember, we talked about perspectives, the perspective view, the materials, and then the illumination. The perspectives, I think we agree that is the easiest one of the three because it's just point and click in floor plan. The material assignation, the mechanics are simple enough. You can move very fast, of course, once you know what colors you want to use in this design. And most of you, I know, are pretty good at that and will move through that very quickly. If anything is going to delay you a little bit and take longer than it should, it will be the illumination. And the illumination is one of the areas where we've made tremendous progress in version 21 and version 22, mostly because we changed engines. So instead of using the engine that we were using in version 17, 18, and 19, now we are using an engine by V-Ray, V as in Victor, and it's fully integrated. There is really very, very little work for you as a designer to do once you apply your finishes and you follow some simple rules. But the way to think about illumination is really along the lines of there are 3 levels of illumination, 3. So you have the global illumination, you have default lights, and then you have everything else. And everything else typically means, recessed lights, maybe some pendant lights, or even under cabinetry, sometimes an LED light, things like that. Now, this distinction is important because, as I said, if you go on a tangent here, you can spend a whole amount of time here working a little bit in circles without, necessarily making the render look much better. Let's see. Global illumination is a no-brainer. It's activated by default. It's algorithmic, means the program reads the design that you created. It reads the size of the walls, the colors, how many windows, the doors, the ceiling, the floor, and decides what level of global illumination will make this kitchen looking good, okay? So that's an on-off and is on by default. That's probably 80% of the illumination that you need. So the good news here is that even before you start worrying about the illumination, the global illumination is already there, probably solving the illumination for you. Now, the second level is what we call default lights. By default, what I mean are the lights that are created by the software without you even thinking about it. And that includes 2 lights. It includes the lights that are called auto, as in automated, and then includes the sun. And both of them add nuance to the render. They're not strictly necessary to see it, but the render will look nicer when you have the 2 of them. So that's level number 2. Level number 3, recessed lights, pendant lights, and the like, they really add no illumination. The only reason to consider placing those lights into the design is because you're going to share this with the customer. And listen, if there is 8 or 10, recessed lights in the design or 2 big pendant lights in the middle, you wanna acknowledge that. So you have to put them in most cases anyway. I'm not saying you should, and I'm saying that when you put those lights in there, they typically have a very small impact in the overall illumination of the room. This is how the default lights look when you are in fast shade. It's not a very alluring look, but it's the way it looks. So what happens here is we have a kitchen with a partition wall. So that door on the back is really, there's like an entrance there or something, and that room will have another auto light. Both lights, we haven't touched them, so by default, they are placed in the center of that space. They have a particular value for intensity and a particular value for elevation. Everything is automated, so what happens is, based on the size of the kitchen, the length of the walls, the height of the ceiling, the software decides what kind of auto light you want. And in every case, the auto lights are going to create 2 problems for you right off the bat. I mean, they mean well and they're useful, but you need to do something about it, because what happens is they create a circle of light in the middle of the room. So the middle of the room is more illuminated than, say, the periphery of the room, you know. And then the second problem is that it creates a halo in the ceiling. Both of them things to be avoided. The good news is that it's very simple to avoid. All you need to do is move the auto light literally right above the camera, wherever you are pointing and clicking. So in the design that I showed you earlier, if you remember when we were creating the perspective, I'm now in Auto Kitchen 22. If we went to see that view, or rather, if we go to see where the lights are, let me show you where the lights are. Here they are. This is my auto one. So the auto one, how come it's here? It's here because I moved it. Initially, it was somewhere here in the center, you know, making a little mess with that illumination that wasn't really helpful. But once you move it, then it becomes really helpful because then it sort of spreads the illumination through the room and it doesn't create a halo in the ceiling. I mean, it does create a halo, but you don't see it because it's right above you. It's not in the viewfinder, okay? Let's see. So default lights include the sun and the auto lights, right? Let me tell you a little about the sun, because I think in most cases, it will be helpful to have the sun. So the sun can be controlled via altering the intensity. You can also control the orientation. The range of the sun intensity is from 1 to 100. I'm again talking about version 21 and 22. The default is 20. The default can be altered right off the bat by going into the light table here and then alter the number here. For this drawing, if you want to render, you want to alter that as a default for future renders, you need to go to advanced preferences and then alter the sun intensity there. Here's an example, left and right, of what happens with different sun intensities. The image on the left has the default intensity, and you can see how you see the sun coming into the countertop. The image on the right has an increased intensity for the sun. This is a little bit subtle, so it's not super apparent, but if you think, or if you look carefully, you'll see that particularly the top of the apron sink here is maybe over illuminated. Also the frame of this panel refrigerator is also a little bit over illuminated. That's what happens when you increase the intensity of the sun. The second way of altering the sun is changing the orientation. The image on the left, you can see the sun hitting the countertop left to right at an angle, you know, but left to right. And in the image on the right is the opposite. It's also at an angle, but it's coming right to left. You can see how the faucet is being reflected. The shadow of the faucet is being reflected on the chair, right? That's because the sun is coming in that direction. So that's the sun. Now, the ability to change that is really very simple. You click on the sun, you click on the little pencil, and this is how in version 21 this works. So you go here, you alter, you know, right now the 3 red lines are the sun, they're coming at an angle. If you want the sun to come this way, there is no need to memorize any numbers. You just literally click on sun, click on the pencil, and then alter the angle by clicking on the red line and moving it. Like that. So that's simple enough. The second chart here on the right, I believe this is called the azimuth, or some number close to that, it sounds close to that. It's basically the angle, you know, whether it is totally vertical, which almost never happens, to maybe an angle in the 30s, mid-30s or something like that, which is probably more often the case. And in either case is, you know, use your mouse, click, and move this dial to the proper level. If you're not sure, play with it a little bit until you find the level that you like. From here, we go to the auto light that we saw a moment ago in that picture that created a halo in the ceiling. So remember, the intensity of this auto light is going to change based on the size of the room. There is no fixture involved, so you will never see like a lamp or anything like that. It's just a gigantic light bulb, that's all. It almost always needs to be repositioned. Reposition the auto lights is very simple. I showed you before, you click on the name of the light, auto 1 or auto 2, whichever the number, and then you click on the move button and move it. Consider also if you really need them. There are cases where, particularly small kitchens, small bathrooms, where you don't even need that. It doesn't really do anything other than maybe add a little bit of time to the render. The third category is the light fixture. These are the lights that you add above and beyond. There are two rules of thumb here to follow. The first one is the less number of lights that you have, the better off you'll be. This is counterintuitive, but true. The more lights you place in a design, you create more noise in the drawing, the shadows fight each other, you might find harder and harder to make a click. So try to start, if you're gonna add some lights, try to go small, maybe add a light and 2 or 3. And then if you have more than half a dozen lights, I would say that you probably have too many lights in your design. The second rule of thumb is to avoid replicating the light plan. This one I understand fully because, of course, you are the designers, you are fully in control of the light plan. You know exactly what goes where. And if you try to use that knowledge to create the render, the problem is that it never really looks just right. You know, it looks maybe close enough. This is one of the areas of development for us. I think in the near future, we might be able to enter light plan information into design and then have the software generate different render scenarios. You know, if you move the lamps or if you change the intensity. At the moment, that's not the case. So try not to go by the light plan. Just go by whatever you need to do on that design so that, likewise anyway, so that the render looks decent. Types of light fixtures, the main types are pendants, recessed lights, undercavity lighting. A couple of tips here. One is considering the recessed lights. These lights go by different names, right? Depending on the part of the country. Some people call them high hats. Some people call them can lights. It's all the same, right? Those lights, typically, you know, you don't place 1 or 2. Typically, there is like a half a dozen of them already. So what you could consider doing to make the render faster is place the can lights through accessories. You know, you place them, you give them whatever value for intensity, whatever name, and then delete them. Delete them from the light. You come here to this light. They will be listed here, and you can either turn them off or delete them altogether, but leave the actual fixture, because what happens, one of the things we've done in version 21 and 22, we illuminated the fixture without the light. So even if you have the light off, it will have some sort of luminosity coming out of it, and that may be all you need to show the customer that you have a few recessed lights on that particular design. The other tip for undercavity lighting is, listen, no one sees those lights, so there is no need to put a fixture. Just instead of creating the fixture and put that painstakingly, you know, in every location, what you can do is go here to the plus sign, click on the name, just call it undercavity lighting, give it whatever intensity, typically a number between 1 and 3, enter the elevation, typically 54, click on multiple, and then, you know, place as many as you may need. You know, every time you click, this will be an undercavity light. Of course, be careful, because the more lights that you create like that, the longer it will take to render. Those are the undercavity lights with no fixture. Again, the reason is no one will see them. Let's see, from here we go to show you what happens in 4 different scenarios with different levels of luminosity and how long it took. Okay, and this number, by the way, changes based on your computer and how much of a processor, a fast processor you have and things like that. But overall, if you render with no global illumination, you are already in trouble because this is not presentable. This is just too dark, right? Now, the good news, if any, is that it only took 64 seconds. So basically it took you a minute to realize that that doesn't work. Now, from here, if you activate global illumination, which, by the way, you don't need to do anything because it's activated by default. The good news is that it takes the same amount of time and it doesn't look bad. I mean, it doesn't look great, right? But it doesn't look bad, right? I mean, that's kind of the design. Now, I don't see the sun. I don't see any pendant luminosity. I don't see undercavity lighting. Okay, but it only took a minute. Now, look what happens if we activate just the sun, just the sun. So this is what happens. Now I see the sun hitting the countertop, hitting the floor, hitting the space on the floor between the island and the other cabinets, and everything looks more yellow. That yellow can be color corrected in a few moments. So don't worry about it. If you like it like this, go with it. But keep in mind that it already took almost twice, you know? From here, we go to a full design with all the lights. I think this design has either 6 or 7 lights. It looks better, right? I can see the luminosity under the pendant lights a little bit. I can see the under cabinetry lighting a little bit. Of course, I see the sun, but it took 3 times as long. Now, 3 minutes is not the end of the world. I'm telling you the 3 times because, of course, if you render in higher resolution or higher quality, instead of 3 minutes, it could be 6, 7, 8, 10, you know? So then that it becomes an issue that is taking too long. The illumination tips then are the more lights you place in a design, the longer you're going to wait. So be careful and therefore add lights only when they are really needed. Global illumination is enough in many cases. If it's not enough and you have a dark room because it's very small or something like that, turn off the wall behind the camera. Just literally the wall behind the camera, turn it off, you know, go to walls on off and click on that wall. The can lights, if you have can lights or hi-hats or recessed lights, all the same, consider turning the lights off and leave the fixture because that will become, it will look like it's illuminated without taking render time. The logistics of the render, what I mean by that is, listen, once you render in fast, fast is code for low quality. So it's called fast, and the image on the left is fast, is too reflective. You know, it's good for you to see if you like what you see. Just know that if you like what you see illumination-wise and color-wise, then you need to really render in medium or higher. The image on the right is medium quality, and you can see how things are not so shiny. You know, I mean, if you like shiny, it's fine. It's just that it looks a little unrealistic. If you look on the floor, for instance, here on the left, it almost looks like it's wet, you know, so that is not credible. The one on the right, I think, is more credible. So what logistics? I mean, there is no logistics in AutoKitchen. Once you have the render, what you need to decide is, do I need to color correct this render? Number one. Number two, consider the best way to share this. Am I going to print it? Am I going to send it to the cloud? Am I emailing this? And then, of course, save the render in whatever format you prefer. You know, the typical formats nowadays tend to be either PNG or JPEG. This is how the new, in version 22, the new color corrections looks like. This is, the color corrections are on the right, by the way. The screen itself is really the render screen. When you render something, it's similar to the one in version 21, but this one has a black background. But basically, the left side are the history renders. In the middle, you have the render at hand. To the right, you have color corrections. Color corrections is similar to what I told you before with the edit of materials. It's a tool at your disposal, but it's largely unnecessary. It's cute, but it's largely unnecessary. The goal of the color correction is obviously to eliminate re-render. And some of these values or variables include exposure, white balance, and a new one called light mix. So the way this works, if you go to a render here and you open the render, this is the render of this same kitchen. This controls allow you to quickly fix, you know, the luminosity here at different levels of intensity with different levels of nuance, you know. White balance is very recommended for white kitchens because it can make the white very yellow or very bluish, depending on what you and your customer are looking for. Color balance is, you know, another dial available to you, saturation. Lens effect is really good if you want to, you know, create can lights with a glimmer. It's actually very cool, but it's not for every design. And then I'm very excited about the light mix. The light mix allows you the opportunity to fix the contribution of each light to the render. And this is listed here on the right. If I turn all the lights off, we get nothing. We get a black screen. If I want to know how much of the illumination is due to the sun, I click on sun and I can correct it, make it bigger or smaller. This is the skylight, which is part of global illumination. This is the auto light, which is right above us. This is the light on the back. This is the pendant light number 1. This is the pendant light number 2. And this is the rest of the illumination. And these values can be altered so that if the render took 5 or 7 minutes, you don't have to re-render again, just fix the light here, okay? Let's see, let me go to, I think this is the bulk of what I wanted to cover today. There are render filters that some people like because they look artistic. Those are also available in AutoKitchen. You can create from the same render either a pencil finish, you know, a pencil looking. It looks like somebody did it using a paper and pencil, hand drawn, exactly. This would be a watercolor, and this will be a combination of both the pencil and the watercolor. The good news is that these things take literally 5 or 10 seconds, so they're super fast, you know. And again, not for every customer, not for every design, but in some cases, it might be a good thing to go with. In terms of sharing renders, lately, more and more people are realizing that it's very fast and elegant and convenient to use the cloud. If you're having meetings face-to-face, the large screen presentation is a good tool to show a render. You just need to make sure the resolution is 1920 by 1080 or higher, because otherwise it might pixelate on you. Email and paper are more of things that you do when you have to, but for the most part, people prefer to do cloud or sharing the things in a large screen. Just a little, it's a well-kept secret, I guess, that we have a cloud component here that allows you to have your own customized page with your work. You can do renders and panoramic views. And the beauty of this is that you don't send a customer an email with 7 attachments, you know, which is a horror show sometimes. You send them a little link, or in this case, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 links. And then the customer can click on the links either on an iPad or on a phone or a Macintosh computer, on a computer, and then see the render or see the panoramic view. Summary findings, color renders, we think they're here to stay. They are an important communication tool. You can do them with AutoKitchen in a timely fashion. Illumination is largely automated and simple if you follow some basic rules. And you can do all of the above and create a great render without becoming a photo editor, using plugins, or taking your design to an external software program to edit it there. No need to do that. These are some renders that we've received. A couple of them came from the UK office, where they do a lot of more modern kitchens, so to speak. And these other ones are, I think, from the States or from Canada. Thank you very much, everyone. If I think Dev may help us now with questions. If we don't get to cover everything here, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is on the webpage. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Miguel, for that walkthrough on the product. We really enjoyed it, and there are some questions. So I am going to just go right through them. So Bill was asking just if you can briefly maybe discuss how to scan in your own background use through Windows, et cetera. Is that possible?
Yeah, there is a folder called backgrounds, and that folder, well, the first folder, I think it's called common, then backgrounds. All you need is a JPEG, and the bigger the resolution of that image, the better. So do something like maybe 3000 by 2000. The actual location of the file where you need to put it, if you go to your AutoKitchen folder, so Microcast software, AutoKitchen, I think it's 22 common, and then backgrounds. This is where the backgrounds live. See, all the backgrounds are JPEG. Just make sure that they are big enough so that when you do a large resolution render, it doesn't pixelate on you. This one here that I'm showing you right now, some sort of a forest, and is 3200 by 2100. So that's what I recommend.
Oh, that's great information. Thank you
Okay.
for that. Thank you. And then from Deborah is, and this is, I'm not sure how you want to approach this, but is AutoKitchen better than 2020 Live? Which is more realistic, AutoKitchens or 2020?
I'm going to leave that to you guys to decide. You know, we have a gallery of images in the AutoKitchen USA and AutoKitchen.com page. We also have regular postings happening in Instagram, perhaps in other social media sites. You be the judge.
Great answer. And then so Lavanya is asking, can we incorporate our 2020 designs into AutoKitchen?
I don't think so. I think the file compatibility will be an issue. We use DWG files. That's the kind of the short for drawing is really the format I think used by AutoCAD and perhaps other applications. I'm not sure exactly what other programs use, but I believe it's not a DWG format file.
Okay, thank you. And then Judy was asking, you mentioned early on about fast shade. Can you just briefly explain that, please?
Right. So when you go to render, one of the things that you can do is indicate the level of quality that you want to render on. So let's say if you have your perspective view, so imagine it's this one here, and you're already happy with the colors because you see them in fast shade and you think this is exactly what you need. So then you click on this pull down menu. You have 4 entries: fast, medium, slow, and very slow, right? So the fast is really what I mentioned before, is really the low quality one, but is the fastest one. Medium is what you want to do in most cases because it strikes a good balance between quality and amount of time that it takes. Slow and very slow, they increase the quality somewhat, but they take longer. So it's really up to you to decide what level you feel comfortable. Most of the renders we post in social media are either medium or slow. They typically take anywhere from 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes, no more than that. But we also do them in high resolution. We do them in like 3000 by 2000 so that when you come really close to it, it doesn't pixelate.
Thank you, Miguel. Here's a question from Kimberly, and I'm not sure again how you want to approach this, but she's asking, I'm curious, how does this compare to Chief Architect?
Well, I mean, I think it would be a disservice for me to talk about programs that I don't use, that I'm not familiar with. I believe some of the things that we do might be similar, and some of the things that we do maybe not. You may want to, if you're really interested in, sort of looking at the differences, one word of advice, maybe give us a call, schedule a demo. They are free, they're very informative. We'll go and we'll show you the program in as much detail as you need to see it, and then you draw your conclusions.
That's a great answer, Miguel. Thank you. And then Carrie is asking, can you import materials into AutoKitchen?
Yeah, you can import materials. The materials, by the way, they show up in the tab that says user. So user is almost as if it says your name, because that would be the materials that you have here are the ones that you yourself enter to use in your designs, right? It's unlimited. The process itself takes maybe 3-4 minutes. It begins with a JPEG with a finish. It needs to be a clean JPEG, meaning you don't want to use a material with a light stain or with a knot in the wood, because the technique that we all use is similar, I believe. It's a repetition technique. So if you have a little distraction in the JPEG, it's going to repeat it multiple times, and it's going to look not credible. But other than that, yeah, there is I think a 2 or 3 page guide on how to enter materials. If you want to know more about it, shoot me an email and I'll share it with you, or I'll point you to the right location where it might be available.
Thank you, Miguel. And then Bill has another question here about night setting renderings, and also some advice for small and narrow rooms like galley or apartment kitchens, bathrooms, etc.
I think, yeah, excellent question. So those rooms that are really narrow, are bathrooms in particular, just because narrow or not, they tend to be small, they tend to be enclosed. It's a challenge to do, not just a render, it's a challenge to do a perspective because you don't have space. So the only way to do that successfully, I think, is, or number one, it takes a little longer. Number two, you need to hide a wall. So the hide a wall process is relatively simple. So what you do, this is a bigger room, of course, but if I need to hide a wall, what you need to do is you go to view, then you click on walls on off, and you click on the wall, and then it's basically gone. Meaning it's not visible anymore until you reactivate that wall. So in this particular case, this model, if I show you how it looks now in fast shade, now that I hit a wall, see, I can see through. This is what you need to do, because the small space is just hard to really convey that illusion of depth because there is no depth. It's so small, So
that's a great point. Thank you. Thank you, Miguel. I know it's hard to, we have another question here, so I'm just going to go through.
Sure.
Dawn says most cabinet companies have catalogs for 2020. Do you offer any catalogs for Auto Kitchen yet? She said it's always nice to learn about other design programs. And then is there possibly a link to Auto Kitchen products and rates? So she wants to know about annual subscriptions, get updates on software. So how does that all work with Auto Kitchen?
Well, the catalog is a major difference between us and pretty much everybody else, but certainly 2020, I think, in the sense that we have just a handful of catalogs, and that might change in the future or not. At the moment, a lot of our customers, they value the ability to design what they need to design, regardless of what the brand name of the cabinetry is. So there is some credit to that, because basically what I'm saying is that it's almost more important to be able, in some instances at least, to be able to do what you need to do without the constraints of a particular manufacturer. So I certainly, that's kind of the philosophical approach that we tend to prefer, because it's basically valuing freedom over working with cabinet maker ABC. That being said, we do work with a few, and we have, I think, very good rapport with them. And maybe over time we'll include a few more lines. Who knows? But at the moment, it's certainly one of the differences, I think, with the other competitors.
Okay, and then of course, if someone needs information about product rates, annual subscription fees, and updates, and how that works.
Reach out to us. Yeah, send us an email, and we can either reply via email, or we can give you a call, whatever you prefer. It doesn't, whatever makes you more comfortable. Yeah.
And then a question here about how available is tech support when questions arise, and is that included in your subscription?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we try to do the best we can. In most cases, we return calls or emails very quickly, certainly within a couple of hours. Most cases, same day. On occasion, he might take a day or two if for whatever reason the volume is too high or whatnot. But we try to help everyone, and yes, it's included. The subscription includes support and updates, and at least for the first year. After that, you can subscribe or not. The software will continue working, but we also keep releasing new versions every year. So in general, if you're using the software for a few years, you probably are better off subscribing, because then you get the support and all the updates.
That's a great thought there. And then Brenda had a question when you were showing that white hotspot for the auto lights. She says,
wasn't that beautiful?
Yeah, you need to move. I know there were some interesting comments, but I won't go there. You need to move them above the ceiling line.
No.
She said another quick explanation, and that would be helpful to her.
Yeah, no, what I meant is, I only show that because sometimes it's better that you see what you might see actually when you do it, so that you're not surprised. No one likes the halo in the ceiling. My point was that it's really very simple to move it. The reason why it's in the center is because the software uses a formula and decides that for you to see as much as possible of that room with no interaction from you, they'll put a light in the center, and the odds are it's going to illuminate, the bigger space, right? It's not a bad thought. I think it's correct. The problem is that in our perspectives, it tends to show that light in the middle, which is, basically a ball of illumination. The borders are dark, and the ceiling is, stained. So all I'm saying is, look, you click on the auto light, you click on this move button, and you move it wherever you want. Okay, but don't go outside the kitchen. Don't go above the ceiling, because if you take that light out, then you lose that illumination. Okay, so you need to stay inside the kitchen, typically above where you are going to shoot in the perspective from. That's what I recommend.
Okay, thank you. Okay. And then just a couple more things here, if you have another couple minutes.
Sure.
So a lot of people are asking, obviously, about file types. I know you mentioned one or two. Dawn was asking, she said they use .dxf or STP files. Can those be used with this program?
That might be better resolved if the person asking the question, if you can send me an email with the specifics, because there might be something that we can do. It really depends. And I don't want to answer without having an opportunity to think about it, maybe consult with one of the technicians.
Okay, that's great. And then Mia was asking, can people add in their own artwork if they want to?
Yeah. In fact, it's actually very simple. The way to do it is to have whatever artwork you like in your desktop. You probably already have that. You want your desktop or anywhere in your computer. And then if you look in this view, for instance, there is an artwork here by a dear friend. So this is imagine you decide to change, beautiful as it is, imagine you decide to change the content of that, right? So what you do is you go into, well, first of all, we need to know the name of that content. So that content is called Canvas I_067. That's the name of that content, okay? So what you do is then you go to edit the material. You click on edit materials. You look for that I_067, edit selected materials. And this is the path here. So if I say, well, instead of that one, I like to use this one, which I love, say, right? That's all you need to do. So that's how you do it.
Oh, perfect. And it changes it.
Right.
I saw that. You just did that. Cool. I'm always impressed by this stuff. So
very kind. You're very kind.
And then just one final question. You were really early on talking about global illumination. Is there an easy way to turn that off and on within this program? I don't know.
Yeah, if you want to go to off the deep end, right? That's how we decided to the phrase, right? Yeah, if you want to go off the deep end, so this is the way. You go here, you go to parameters, take this off. That's it.
Oh, that's it.
I think they didn't put the name Illumination because it was too long, so they call it Global Light. But honestly, I mean, I think if you do this, you're already in trouble even before you start. So I respect the question. I say, be careful because you might be there for hours. Okay.
Oh, that's great advice.
Okay.
Well, a lot of people had to leave a little bit earlier, but they were all thanking you. It was very informative. And I appreciate that you stayed to answer all of these questions. It's been great. And a lot of people are saying that this is a really easy program to use. So I want to thank you, Miguel. And if you might want to put your contact information up there one more time, just so everyone can see that. And so then we have that also in the end of this recording. And again, thank you everyone in the audience for being with us. And again, to you, Miguel, it's been a pleasure working with it.
Likewise. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
You too.